The fluorescent lights buzzed softly above me as I lay on the hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling my nostrils. I had been here for hours, my ankle propped awkwardly on a stack of pillows, the pain radiating through my leg like an unwelcome song stuck in my head. My name is Clara, and this was not my first visit to the hospital. In fact, I felt like I had become a regular, an unfortunate member of a club I never wanted to join. As the clock ticked monotonously along the wall, I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping in. I had come to expect long waits and vague reassurances, but I had hoped that today would be different. I shifted my weight, the plastic mattress crinkling beneath me, and longed for the comfort of my couch back home, where I could curl up with a book and shut out the world. "Clara!" The nurse's voice pierced through my thoughts, her tone brisk and businesslike. I looked up to see a woman in scrubs, her name tag reading Jenna. She carried a clipboard under her arm, and her eyes were focused more on the paperwork than on me. "Yes, that's me," I replied, forcing a smile. I knew the routine by now. I needed to stay positive, even when it felt like the universe was conspiring against me. "All right, let's take a look at that ankle," she said, still not quite meeting my gaze. I winced as she examined the swollen joint, her fingers pressing a little too hard. "Looks like you've sprained it pretty badly. We'll get you some ice and a crutch, but you're going to need to elevate it as much as possible for the next few days." I nodded, but her detached demeanor nagged at me. "How long do you think I'll be stuck with this?" I asked, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "Depends on how well you follow the recovery instructions," she said curtly. "But honestly, people like you," she paused, glancing at the chart. "You're not really a priority for us right now." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. A wave of heat flushed my cheeks as I processed what she had just said. "People like me?" I echoed, incredulous. My heart raced, a mixture of anger and disbelief surging through me. "Look, I know it sounds harsh," Jenna continued, finally looking up at me, her expression now a blend of annoyance and impatience. "But we have a lot of critical cases right now. Just try to understand." "Understand what?" I shot back, my voice rising slightly. "That because I'm not bleeding out or on the brink of death, I don't deserve proper care? That I should just deal with the pain quietly and hope no one pays attention?" She shifted uncomfortably, clearly unprepared for my outburst. "I'm just saying we have limited resources," she muttered, avoiding my gaze once more. "Right resources," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "So what? I just sit here and wait until someone more important comes along." Jenna sighed, her frustration evident. "I didn't mean it like that. Just, look, I'll get you the ice and the crutch. You'll be okay, I promise." As she turned to leave the room, I felt a lump forming in my throat. I wanted to scream, to fight back against the cold indifference I had encountered too many times in this place. But instead, I allowed the silence to fill the space between us, a chasm of misunderstanding. Once Jenna was gone, I sank back against the pillows, the tears I had been holding at bay finally spilling over. How could someone who was supposed to care for me reduce me to just another number? I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over a name that had always been my lifeline, my older brother, Michael. Before I could change my mind, I pressed the call button. It rang only once before he picked up, his warm voice wrapping around me like a cozy blanket. "Clara! Hey! How's it going? You okay?" "Not really," I replied, my voice trembling. "I'm at the hospital, and I just had a really awful exchange with a nurse." "What happened?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. I inhaled deeply, trying to gather my thoughts. "I hurt my ankle pretty badly, but when I told her how much pain I was in, she just brushed me off, said I wasn't a priority." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That's ridiculous. You deserve care, Clara. You're not just some statistic to be ignored." "I know, but it's getting exhausting. I feel like every time I come here, I'm just a nuisance. I just want someone to really see me, to care." "Let me talk to someone," he said decisively. "I'm coming down there." "No, you don't have to do that." I protested, but it was futile. I could hear the determination in his voice, the protective instinct that had always been a part of him. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Just hold tight, okay? You're not alone." I ended the call feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Michael had always been my rock, but I hated putting him in a position where he felt he had to rescue me. I leaned my head back against the wall, letting the tears flow freely now. I didn't want to be this person, the dependent sister who needed saving, but the hurtful words of that nurse echoed in my mind. A short while later, the door swung open again, and Jenna re-entered the room, this time with an ice pack and crutches. "Here you go," she said, her tone softer, perhaps a bit more apologetic. "Thanks," I mumbled, grateful but still wary. "I hope you can understand that sometimes we have to make tough choices," she said, as if trying to justify herself. "We care for everyone, but resources are tight." "I get that," I replied reluctantly. "But it shouldn't come at the cost of someone's dignity." Jenna hesitated, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, recognition, perhaps. "I'll try to be better," she said quietly. "I know we can do better." Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and Michael stepped inside, his presence filling the room with warmth and strength. "Clara, I'm here," he said, rushing to my side. "What's going on?" I looked between them, feeling a subtle tension in the air. "Just talking about priorities," I said, trying to keep it light, but I could see the seriousness in Michael's eyes. Jenna cleared her throat, looking from me to him. "I'll let you two talk," she said, retreating towards the door. But before she left, she turned back to me, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. "I'm sorry, Clara. I didn't mean to hurt you." As the door clicked shut behind her, I turned to Michael, who was already assessing me with concern. "She didn't get it, Mike. It's like I'm invisible." "You're not invisible to me," he said firmly, taking my hand in his. "We'll figure this out together." At that moment, I realized that perhaps this was the start of something new. Maybe it was time to stand up for myself, not just for me, but for anyone else who felt dismissed. I felt a sense of purpose igniting within me. I would make that call that would change everything, not just for me, but for the way others were treated in this hospital. As I sat there with Michael, I knew that this was only the beginning. The fight for dignity and respect in a system that often forgot the human behind the patient had just started, and I was ready to take a stand. As I sat there holding Michael's hand, a sense of determination began to blossom inside me, pushing aside the lingering hurt from Jenna's earlier words. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air of the hospital room fill my lungs, and let my mind drift back to what I had just experienced. It was as if I was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring down at the chaos below, yet something inside pushed me to leap into the fray rather than retreat. "Clara, I know that look," Michael said, breaking me from my reverie. His eyes were sharp, filled with both concern and that familiar spark of encouragement I often drew strength from. "What look?" I asked, trying to play innocent, but I could feel the fire in my belly simmering just below the surface. "The one where you're about to make a decision that could impact everything," he replied, his voice steady and calm. "What are you thinking?" I hesitated, weighing my words. I don't want to be just another patient who's ignored. I want to make sure that no one else feels this way, like we're just a burden. We deserve empathy, Michael, not indifference. He squeezed my hand again, his grip reassuring. "You're right. You absolutely deserve that. But how do you plan on making that happen?" I glanced toward the door where Jenna had exited. Her expression had shifted just before she left, and it made me wonder if perhaps I could reach her, or others like her, in a way that might change their perspective. "I think I need to talk to the hospital administration," I said, my voice gaining strength. "If I share my experience, it could spur some changes." "Do you really think they'll listen?" Michael asked, eyebrows raised in skepticism. The concern in his eyes was palpable. I could sense his protective instincts flaring up, and I appreciated it, but I was resolute. "I have to believe they will," I insisted. "If I don't speak up, who will? This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's come here feeling overlooked or dismissed." "You're right, and I'll support you," he said, nodding. "But let's approach this with a plan, okay? We don't want to go in there guns blazing. We need to present it thoughtfully." Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and Jenna stepped back into the room, her demeanor different this time. She was wringing her hands together, her brow creased with something resembling concern. "Clara, can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than before. I glanced at Michael, who nodded slightly, encouraging me to engage. "Sure, what's up?" Jenna took a tentative step forward, her gaze flickering between me and Michael. I realized I may have come off as callous earlier, and I wanted to sincerely apologize. We're under a lot of pressure, but that's no excuse for my behavior. I studied her face, searching for sincerity in her words. Thank you for saying that, I replied carefully. But it's not just about you being nice. It's about understanding that every patient deserves attention, regardless of how serious their condition appears. As a nurse, I care deeply about my patients, she said, her voice a little steadier now. But sometimes I feel like I'm lost in the system, just trying to keep my head above water. It's hard when we have so many emergencies. I admit I let that affect how I treated you. I could feel my heart rate quickening. This was the moment for me to bring up my plan. Jenna, I want to talk about how your department can do better. I think there's a major disconnect between patients and staff. I want to advocate for changes, for new policies that prioritize empathy and care. Her eyes widened, and I could see gears turning in her mind. You want to advocate for patient care? That's a big step. It is, I agreed, but I believe it's necessary. I can't be the only one feeling this way. If I can reach out to administration, maybe we can implement training programs that focus on compassion and understanding in our care practices. I'd be willing to help you, Jenna said, her voice firm. I know the issues we face, and I want to be part of a change. But Clara, I must warn you that it won't be easy. There's a culture in healthcare that resists change. I don't expect it to be easy, I replied, feeling a surge of adrenaline. But I'm willing to fight for it. I'm tired of feeling like my pain doesn't matter. And I can't imagine how many others are suffering in silence. Michael was watching our conversation with keen interest, his expression a mix of pride and concern. I think this is a great idea, Clara, he said, standing up straight. But we need to be strategic about it. It might help to gather stories from other patients, too. Exactly, I exclaimed, feeling the fire inside me grow. If I can collect testimonials, it could strengthen our case. We need to show them that this isn't just my story, but a collective experience. Jenna nodded, her eyes brightening. I can help facilitate that. I can talk to colleagues who might be willing to share their thoughts on the current system. If we can show that this is a widespread issue, it might make a bigger impact. As we spoke, I felt an electric charge in the room, the kind that happens when ideas are exchanged and hope ignited. It was as if we were embarking on a shared mission, though we came from different backgrounds. Okay, so what's our first step? Michael asked, his tone encouraging. I took a moment to collect my thoughts, the weight of my emotions now replaced with a sense of purpose. I think we draft a letter to the hospital administration outlining my experience and our proposed solutions. Then, we gather testimonials. After that, we request a meeting. Jenna nodded vigorously. I can help with the letter. I have a better understanding of how the administration operates than you may expect. Thank you, I said, feeling a rush of gratitude for her willingness to help. The unexpected support was comforting, and it felt like a turning point in my journey. Just then, a nurse poked her head into the room, interrupting our momentum. Clara, they're ready to take you for your X-ray. I felt a sudden pang of anxiety, but I didn't let it show. Okay, I'll be right there. My heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. There were so many unknowns, and I was stepping into a fight for a cause I believed in. Let's regroup when you're back, Jenna said, her energy palpable. We have a lot to accomplish. Michael stood beside me as I prepared to get up. We'll be right here, Clara. This is just the beginning. I nodded, feeling a blend of fear and excitement coursing through me. I was ready to take that leap, to challenge the system that had made me feel insignificant for too long. As I stepped out of the room and into the hallway, I felt the weight of my mission ahead, and for the first time in a long while I felt empowered. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, and with each step, I could feel the path stretching out before me. A path that could lead to change, not just for myself, but for countless others who had felt the same sting of neglect. As the nurse led me toward the imaging room, I took a deep breath, focusing on the resolve building inside me. This was far from over. It was just the beginning of a journey I hadn't anticipated but was now ready to face head-on. As I walked down the sterile corridor, the familiar smell of antiseptic hung heavily in the air, mixing with the distant sounds of machinery beeping and nurses conversing softly. The hospital was a world unto itself, an ecosystem where hope and despair coexisted in uneasy harmony. Each footfall echoed, a reminder that I was not just a patient, I was a catalyst for change. The nurse who led me to the imaging room was efficient but quiet, her expression unreadable. I could sense her professionalism, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps she, too, was wrapped up in the overwhelming demands of the hospital environment. We passed a series of glass-walled rooms, each one housing patients in various states of distress. A part of me ached for them, feeling their pain like a shared burden. "Here we are," the nurse said, stopping in front of a door labeled Imaging with bold letters. She pushed it open, revealing a stark room filled with equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. The walls were painted a dull shade of beige, and the fluorescent lights hummed softly, casting an artificial glow over everything. "Just step up onto the platform, and we'll get started," she instructed, her voice devoid of warmth. I nodded and took a deep breath, stepping onto the cold surface. The machine loomed above me like a giant, unfeeling sentinel, ready to snap pictures of whatever secrets my body held. "Can you lift your chin a bit?" she asked, adjusting the machine. I complied, my heart racing not just from the impending X-ray but from the weight of what lay ahead. I thought of the conversation with Jenna and Michael, the fire of determination still burning fiercely within me. This X-ray was a small hurdle, but beyond it was a much larger battle. As the machine whirred to life, I felt a sudden wave of vulnerability wash over me. In this moment, I was not just Clara, I was a voice for those who felt unseen. I closed my eyes briefly, allowing the sounds of the machine to fade into the background as I focused on my purpose. I was ready to speak out, to forge connections, and to bring about change. "Okay, we're done," the nurse said, her tone still clipped. I stepped down, grateful to be away from the machine. "You can get dressed now. Just wait in the room, we'll have the results shortly." I nodded, and as she left, I allowed myself a moment to collect my thoughts. I sat on the edge of the examination table, reflecting on the path I had embarked upon. My mind wandered to the patients I had seen while being led down the corridor. Each one had a story, a struggle that deserved to be acknowledged. I thought of the elderly man in room 203 who had looked so lost, and the young woman in the recovery room who had winced in pain as she was assisted by a nurse. It was a system that, at times, swallowed them whole, their voices muffled beneath the weight of bureaucratic indifference. Moments later, the nurse returned, clipboard in hand. "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your results," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. I appreciated her efficiency, but I couldn't help feeling that she still saw me as just another patient, just another statistic. "Thank you," I replied, trying to inject warmth into my words, hoping it might soften the walls around her. She barely nodded before leaving the room again. I took out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I landed on Jenna's name. I wanted to reach out, to remind her that I was serious about our plans, but I hesitated. Was I too eager? Would I overwhelm her? I took a deep breath, the weight of my mission pressing down on me, and finally sent a quick message. "Hey Jenna, I just finished the X-ray. Let's connect when I get back. I'm ready to get started. Asterisk." As I waited, I allowed my mind to wander over the mobilizing possibilities we had discussed. A training program for healthcare staff centered around empathy and compassion. How transformative that could be. It wasn't just about policies. It was about changing hearts and minds. Suddenly, the door opened, and Dr. Harris stepped in, his expression serious yet kind. "Clara," he greeted, his voice steady. "I've looked over your X-ray results, and I can assure you there's nothing alarming." Relief washed over me, mixed with a tinge of annoyance. It was just another reminder that the medical system could sweep minor issues under the rug while continuing to disregard the emotional toll on patients. I couldn't help but think of how many patients were sent home with unresolved feelings, just like I had been earlier. "Thank you, doctor," I replied, trying to sound composed. "But I want to talk about something more than just my health today." Dr. Harris raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity passing through his gaze. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath, knowing this was my moment to bridge the gap between patient and provider. I've had some experiences here that have led me to believe there's an urgent need for change in how patients are treated. I've spoken with Jenna, and we want to advocate for a program focused on empathy and patient care. His expression shifted from curiosity to surprise, and for a moment, I was unsure how he would react. "That's quite ambitious," he said slowly. "What specifically are you suggesting?" "Training for staff to understand the emotional experiences of their patients," I explained, my passion bubbling to the surface. "No one should feel invisible when they're in a vulnerable state. It's about creating a culture of empathy that reverberates through the entire hospital." Dr. Harris crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. "You realize this isn't an easy conversation to have. The system is entrenched in its ways, and there will be resistance." "I expect that," I replied, feeling the conviction in my voice. "But if we don't start somewhere, when will we? If I'm going to fight for my dignity, I want to fight for everyone else's too." For a moment, silence hung between us, and I could practically hear his thoughts racing. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I admire your determination, Clara. I'll support you in this. Let's arrange a meeting with the administration to present your ideas." My heart soared. "Really? You'd do that?" "Why not?" he said with a small smile. "You've given me a lot to think about, and if this could improve our patient care, it's worth pursuing." The spark of hope ignited even more fiercely within me. "Thank you, Dr. Harris. I promise I'll do everything I can to make this work." "Just be prepared for some pushback," he cautioned. "But if you believe in this, I'll stand beside you." As he stepped out, I felt a mix of a thrill of newfound possibilities and the weight of the challenge ahead. This wasn't just my journey anymore, it was becoming a shared mission. With a surge of energy, I pulled out my phone and texted Jenna again. Asterisk, Dr. Harris is on board. Let's meet and plan our next steps. Asterisk. I couldn't wait to share the news. As I sat on the table, heart racing with anticipation, I knew this was just the beginning of something powerful. Change was in the air, and I was ready to embrace it, not just for myself, but for every patient who had ever felt overlooked and undervalued. As I prepared to leave the room, the nurse peeked in again. "Clara, you're all set. You can head back when you're ready." "Thank you," I replied, a newfound determination solidifying my resolve. I stepped out of the imaging room and back into the bustling corridor, ready to face whatever challenges awaited me. This was the start of a new chapter, not just in my life, but in the lives of others. With each step, I felt the weight of my purpose guiding me forward. The fight for compassion in healthcare was just beginning, and I was ready to lead the charge. As I stepped out of the imaging room, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like a swarm of tired bees. The hospital corridor felt alive in a different way now, a vibrant pulse that synced with my newfound determination. Each hurried footstep, each whispered conversation seemed to echo my resolve. I was not just a patient anymore. I was stepping into the role of advocate, a voice for those who had been silenced by the machinery of the healthcare system. The air was thick with antiseptic, and I could hear the distant beeping of machines, a constant reminder of the lives at stake behind closed doors. I took a deep breath, the sterile scent filling my lungs, and pushed forward. My heart raced as I approached the nurse's station. The nurse who had previously brushed aside my concerns was busy sorting through patient files, her brow furrowed in concentration. For a moment, I hesitated, wanting to express my gratitude for Dr. Harris's support, but the memory of her earlier words stung like a bee that had nestled in my chest. "Excuse me," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. She looked up, her expression guarded. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" "Sure," she replied, her tone neutral as she set her clipboard down. "What's on your mind?" "I just wanted to thank you for your work here. I know it can be very demanding," I began, unsure of how to bridge the gap between us. "I had an experience earlier that has really inspired me to advocate for change." Her eyes narrowed slightly, and I could see a flicker of skepticism there. "What kind of change?" "I spoke with Dr. Harris about a program that focuses on empathy and compassion in patient care. I believe it could really help patients who feel overlooked," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I want to involve staff like you, so you can understand how vital your role is in shaping patient experiences." She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter as if bracing for an attack. "You think we lack compassion?" "No," I replied, shaking my head. "But sometimes the system can be overwhelming. I experienced it today. I think we can help each other if we work together." "Working together," she echoed, skepticism washing over her features. You're just a patient. How do you know what it's like to be a nurse? Maybe I don't, I admitted, my voice steady. But I do know what it feels like to be treated like I don't matter. I believe we can bridge that gap. I'm not just advocating for myself. I'm advocating for all patients, those who feel invisible. For a moment, silence fell between us. She seemed to be processing my words, her gaze shifting away as she wrestled with her thoughts. You really think you can change things? She finally asked, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her voice. I have to believe that I can, I replied softly, feeling a connection begin to form. I'm not alone in this fight. There are others here who want to feel valued, and I want to help make that happen. Her expression softened for a moment, a flicker of understanding crossing her face before it hardened again. Look, Clara, I appreciate what you want to do, but it's not that simple. The hospital has policies, protocols. I know, and I respect that, I interjected. But I also believe that empathy should be at the core of patient care. It doesn't have to be a battle. It can be a collaboration. She paused, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. What do you want from me? I want your input. I want you to share your experiences, your ideas about how we can create a culture of empathy here, I said earnestly. Together, we can shape a program that both staff and patients can believe in. Her face softened, just a little. I'll think about it. But you'll need more than just my blessing to make this happen. You'll have to convince others. Higher-ups, administrators. They're the real gatekeepers. I know, I replied, a smile breaking through my anxiety. But if we can unite our voices, we can make them listen. Will you help me? She hesitated, glancing around the bustling nurses' station as if weighing the consequences of her decision. Fine, she said at last, her tone begrudging. But you'd better be serious about this. I'm not going to end up in trouble over some patient's whim. I promise, this is bigger than me, I assured her. Thank you for considering it. As I turned to leave, the nurse called out, Clara, one more thing. If you really want to make a difference, you should talk to some of the other nurses. They might have insights that could help you. I nodded, a sense of hope washing over me. I will. Thank you. Walking away, I felt lighter, like a weight had lifted off my shoulders. I had taken a step into the unknown, and though uncertainty lingered, the thrill of possibility surged within me. The nurse's cautious support was a flicker of hope that could ignite a much-needed flame. Soon, I found myself in the waiting area, surrounded by patients and their families. The atmosphere buzzed with a mix of anxiety and hope. I instinctively searched for Jenna's familiar face and spotted her sitting in a corner, scrolling through her phone. Relief washed over me as I approached her. Hey, I greeted, my voice laced with excitement. Clara, you look like you just won the lottery, Jenna said, her eyes lighting up. What happened? I spoke with Dr. Harris. He's on board with the empathy initiative. And I had a great conversation with one of the nurses. She's considering helping us too. Wow, that's incredible, Jenna exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. What's the plan? I want to gather more insights from nurses and staff, maybe set up a meeting to brainstorm how we can implement the program, I explained, my thoughts racing. But I'll need your help to organize everything. Of course. This is exactly what we talked about, she said, her eyes shining with determination. I can start reaching out to some contacts and gathering support. We'll need to show a united front. Exactly, I replied, feeling the momentum build. It's about creating a wave of change that no one can ignore. Jenna grinned, her excitement palpable. Let's do this. I'll grab us some coffee while we brainstorm ideas. As she walked away, I took a moment to gather my thoughts, the energy of the hospital swirling around me. I felt invigorated, ready to take on the challenge ahead. The mission had grown beyond me. It was about changing a culture, about ensuring that every patient felt seen and valued. While waiting for Jenna to return, I glanced around the waiting area, noticing the people seated nearby. Each face told a story, a worried father cradling his child, an elderly woman clutching her purse tightly, a young couple whispering softly to one another. They were all waiting, all hoping for good news, yet I wondered how many of them had felt similar neglect in their care. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupted my thoughts. Clara! I turned to see Dr. Harris approaching, a stack of papers in his hand. I wanted to catch you before you leave. I have some suggestions for our meeting with the administration. My heart leaped at his initiative. Really? That's wonderful. I think we should prepare a solid presentation, something that highlights both the statistical need for a program like this and the emotional impact it can have, he said, his eyes gleaming with purpose. I have contacts who might be willing to support us as well. Thank you, Dr. Harris. I'm beyond grateful for your help, I replied, my excitement bubbling over. We're in this together, Clara, he said, a smile breaking through his usual seriousness. Let's make this happen. With that, the pieces of my plan began to fall into place. For the first time since stepping into this hospital, I felt the intoxicating thrill of possibility. The journey ahead would not be easy, but I was no longer alone in this fight. I had allies, and together, we could create a revolution of empathy that would ripple through every corner of the hospital. As I looked around the bustling waiting area, I saw not just patients, but a community in desperate need of understanding. I was ready to lead the charge, and as I stepped out with Jenna and Dr. Harris at my side, I knew that this was not just the end of one chapter, it was the beginning of a movement that could reshape healthcare itself. As we exited the hospital, my heart pounded with adrenaline and hope. Jenna and Dr. Harris walked alongside me, their faces lit with determination. The air outside felt different, more vibrant and alive, as if the world itself was mirroring the change we hoped to enact within the hospital walls. I think we're really onto something here, Jenna said, adjusting her glasses as she glanced at me. This program could actually make a difference. It will make a difference, I corrected, confidence swelling within me. We just have to keep pushing and get the right people on board. Dr. Harris nodded, his expression serious yet encouraging. I've scheduled a meeting with some administration members for next week. We'll present our ideas then. It's crucial we come prepared. Absolutely, I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. We should gather as much data as we can. Testimonials from patients, stories of neglect and compassion. It's time we made our voices heard. As we sat down at a cafe, just a block from the hospital, the chatter of other patrons filled my ears, blending with the clinking of cups and the scent of fresh coffee. I felt a surge of gratitude for the people around me. Every single one of them had a story to tell, emotions to share, and dreams for their health and well-being. After several brainstorming sessions over coffee, we molded our ideas into a cohesive plan. Dr. Harris brought forth the concept of a patient experience committee, a body made up of nurses, doctors, and patients that could work together to improve the quality of care. Imagine if patients could voice their experiences directly, he said, his eyes alight with enthusiasm. We could create real change, bridging the gap between staff and those seeking care. Jenna's fingers danced over her phone as she took notes. Let's create a survey to gather feedback. We can reach out to patients in different areas of the hospital to get a broader understanding of the issues they face. Yes, and we can schedule regular meetings to keep everyone updated, I added, feeling the energy of our collaboration invigorate me. Time sped by as we worked. With each passing moment, our enthusiasm grew, but so did the weight of the task ahead. It was exhilarating yet terrifying, like standing on the precipice of an unknown adventure. When the day of the meeting arrived, tension hung heavy in the air. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach as we sat in the sterile conference room, awaiting the arrival of the administrators. The bland walls felt oppressive, but I reminded myself of the purpose that had brought us here. Finally, the doors swung open, and a group of stern-faced administrators filed in, their expressions unreadable. I took a deep breath and gathered my notes, ready to present our vision. As Dr. Harris began the presentation, I watched the administrators' faces closely, searching for signs of receptiveness. He outlined the need for empathy in healthcare, supported by statistics and patient testimonials. The room was silent, the only sounds the rustling of papers and the soft clicking of a pen. Then it was my turn. I stood up, my knees trembling slightly, and shared my personal story, the feelings of being overlooked, the moments where compassion had been overshadowed by the sterile nature of the hospital environment. This initiative isn't just about improving policies, I said, my voice steady. It's about humanizing care. Every patient deserves to be seen and heard. The eyes of the administrators bore into me, some skeptical, some intrigued. I could feel Jenna's encouraging presence behind me, and it bolstered my courage. After what felt like an eternity, the head administrator finally spoke up. "This is a compelling proposal, Clara. But how do we ensure sustainability? How can we guarantee that these changes won't be lost over time?" I paused, my heart racing. It was a fair question, and I had been anticipating it. "We need to integrate this initiative into the hospital's core values," I began. "If we can create a culture of empathy that becomes part of the training for all staff, it will remain a priority even as staff changes. We can also appoint a liaison from each department to monitor progress." Nods of agreement rippled through the room, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Before the meeting concluded, Jenna chimed in with a brilliant idea. We could create workshops for staff where they can experience what it's like to be a patient. Role-playing could foster empathy and understanding. The administrators whispered amongst themselves, considering our proposal. For a moment, I held my breath, waiting for their verdict. Finally, the head administrator cleared her throat. "We'll take your proposal under advisement and reconvene next week. It's worth exploring." Relief washed over me like a wave, and when we left the meeting room, I felt lighter, buoyed by the possibility of change. As I stepped outside, I glanced around, taking in the bustling street filled with life. I had come so far, and yet, in that moment, I felt the weight of what still lay ahead. But as we celebrated our small victory over coffee, an urgent call came through my phone, breaking the moment of joy. It was the nurse I had spoken to earlier, the one who had initially dismissed my concerns. "Clara, it's urgent. You need to come back to the hospital. There's something you need to know," she said, her voice shaky. My heart raced as I glanced at Jenna and Dr. Harris, who shared my concern. "What happened?" I asked, my stomach churning with anxiety. "I can't say over the phone." "Please, just come." We rushed back to the hospital, the familiar sterile smell hitting me like a wall as we entered. My mind raced with possibilities. Had there been a crisis? When we reached the nurse's station, she was waiting for us, her face pale and drawn. "I'm so glad you're here. I didn't know who else to turn to. There's something going on with the patients, something deeply concerning." "What do you mean?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Some of the patients have been receiving inadequate care. It's not just negligence, it's systemic. I found out about a covert initiative that prioritizes certain patients over others based on their insurance or status." Her eyes widened with urgency. "What? That can't be!" I stammered, disbelief coursing through me. "We need to inform the administration. This is exactly why we need our initiative." "Exactly. But they're involved in it," she whispered, looking around as if the walls had ears. "I don't know who to trust anymore." My mind raced. This was a shocking revelation that could turn our entire mission upside down. Suddenly, the fight for empathy felt even more significant, and I realized that the journey had become more than just advocating for compassion. It was about unraveling a deeper injustice. The clear path we had envisioned now seemed clouded with shadows, but I knew we couldn't turn back. "We need to gather evidence," I said. "If we can expose this, we can press for real reform." The nurse nodded reluctantly, and Jenna and Dr. Harris exchanged determined glances. As we brainstormed our next steps, I felt a fire ignite within me. The fight was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. This was the moment that would define not just my journey, but the future of our healthcare system. We would shine a light on the darkness, champion the voiceless, and ensure that, finally, every patient would be treated with dignity and compassion. As we left the hospital that evening, the weight of our mission settled on my shoulders. But I also felt a newfound strength coursing through me. I wasn't just Clara, the patient. I was Clara, the advocate, and together with my team, we would change the narrative of healthcare forever. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew we would rise up, fueled by the hope of a better tomorrow. The elixir of compassion had been discovered, and we were ready to share it with the world.